Brought to you by JMR Rentals, professional digital cinema and broadcast equipment rentals in Brooklyn, New York. JMRNY.com. Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend, where we go behind the scenes and talk to the creators of independent entertainment. I'm Jason Godbey, and joining me via Zoom today, he is an award-winning producer and the man behind Laurent TV, Mr. Lou Belanger. Welcome, Lou.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Really appreciate. Congratulations on all your work, and it's a pleasure for me to be here with you.
I want to talk to you about Saint Laurent. I want to talk to you about production. But first, I want to talk to you about you and kind of how you got to television producing. What is your origin story?
I come from my mother's got 3 sisters. My father's got 3 brothers. And both of them, they broke a cycle of like poverty and domestic violence and no education, basically. So they came together when they were really young. I just turned a couple of weeks ago 40 years old. My father is 60 years old. So they had me pretty young. My father was more like a big brother to me than a father at first. So I come from a family when we listened to a lot of music, a lot of soul, a lot of funk, but art wasn't really a thing because they were just trying to provide and to survive, and they were trying to like teach me and give me some great values of life. But I come from a family of boxers. Like all my uncles are boxers. One of my uncle was a goon or an enforcer for a year for the Detroit Red Wings. And there was a lot of violence in my childhood. I come from it's ironic, but I come from a really multicultural neighborhood in Quebec City. And it was the 80s and the 90s, and it was hip hop and stuff like that. So hip hop was kind of close to boxing because it had like a violent approach to it and a real like truthful approach to it. But I was always an artist in the back of my mind. So I was the first one in both of my families to go to university. I studied in communication, business, journalism. And, you know, my parents made so much sacrifice just to put food on the table. I didn't want to go for my passion or my hobby. I wanted to provide. I wanted to make a good living. I wanted to continue that way of getting out of poverty. So I worked through my 20s in advertising and marketing and stuff like that to have a good salary, a good pay. And it was a compromise for me working with concepts, colors, image, sounds. But I felt to a certain point that I was kind of selling my creativity to like products or clients that didn't share the same values as me. So my lovely wife, who's a singer, a TV host, and I always pushed her and support her and admire her in her career and stuff like that. She kind of inspired me one day. I was like stuck in traffic. We just had our twins like 8 or 7 years ago, and I thought that's enough. I was involved in music on the side. I was like doing some websites on the side. I was producing music videos and music albums, but it wasn't for a living because the payday wasn't extraordinary on that side. But I always had like a foot on the artistic side without fully committing to it. So one day, my 20 plus years old best friend and now associate Raphael Perez, who's from Spanish origins. Like she was doing TV and stuff. I was meeting her producers, and I was like, I could do that. I could like express my creativity and my thoughts and my values through content that I create for myself or for my friends or for my partners, instead of putting that creativity uh, like selling it in marketing or publicity or stuff like that for clients. So that's when one morning I decided I could do some TV, I could do some web, I could do some movies, because it's all about images, sounds, values, ways to see life. And I could like put all my life experiences into something that doesn't necessarily change the world. But what I like to say to myself is that the content that we put out contribute, even in a small way, to make the world better.
Did you just start a company right away, or did you work for like were you a producer on somebody else's company, or you just said I'm going to do my own thing right from the get go?
I used to be ashamed of saying that, but I was able to put a little bit of money aside, but and I worked kind of for free for a year for my wife, Mariam, um, producer. So he was producing one of the show that she was hosting, and I was just kind of hanging around. I was trying to help, and looking back at it, I think that's kind of strange, because I was really like, they what they say about the imposter syndrome, or I was just like hanging around trying to consolidate what I life and professional experiences I had to trying to become a movie or a TV producer. So I had 1 year that I didn't admit it to myself back then, but I was kind of an intern, and I was in my 30s. And then a week after, we formed a partnership with a small company that was doing like videos for my associate label. My partner, he's got a music label which is pretty successful in Quebec and in Montreal and in Canada. And they were doing the videos and they were doing some advertising, and we partnered with them to create like the TV and the movie section of the company for a year. We weren't getting along. We weren't seeing eye to eye. So like 3 or 4 years ago, I don't keep track of time. Sometime we decided like, okay, I did the internship 1 year. We trying to make a partnership with a company that was always already doing some visual production. Now let's go on our own. And we lost a lot of money, we lost a lot of time, because we wanted to create, we want to create templates, we want to create ways to do stuff. We didn't want to borrow or steal or take. We were learning from other companies, but we knew that times they were changing. We knew that content was evolving really fast. Society with the internet and social media, you see it in politics and stuff like that. It was so we thought it was good to learn from what was going on and what have been done, but we also thought that it was time to like demolish everything of how it was done, learn from it, respect the past, respect the pioneers, but start from scratch and start over.
How would you describe the company as it stands today? Like if somebody said, "Hey, Saint Laurent TV, what do you guys do?" How do you like? What's the pitch for the company when you're telling people about it?
It used to be about all those big companies in the States, in Europe, everywhere around the world, and here in Canada and Quebec, province of Quebec too. The best metaphor or the best way of explaining it, it's like sometimes we feel that the Titanic is sinking and we're circling around it in jet skis. So we want to be light, we want to be elite, we want to be like expendables. I don't know if I'm using the term right. Shout out to Sylvester Stallone and his crew, but we kind of be elastic. So we can do, for example, like a 4 million project, a TV project, or 5 million movie, for example. I'm talking about numbers that we are doing right now. Yes, we are planning to grow bigger than that, but when we expand to a project like that, we work with hired resources, hired guns. So we pay people well, we find the right resources, but we hire them for one project. So we want to keep it small. We want to keep that kind of family vibe. We we want to keep it small, but dream big and do big. And I think that's what we do. And how would I describe the company as far? So that's more of kind of a modus operandi, the way we operate or see the business on the business side. But on the content, like I said earlier, when I had twins, I realized a lot of stuff. I'm in a multicultural, or what they call in porn, biracial. Sorry for my language, but I come from an interracial or multicultural union. So I got like mixed kids and stuff like that. And we had a daughter and a son. So I want to contribute, even in the smallest way, to a better world. That's my ambition. That's not my pretension. That's my ambition or my goal. So I tend to say that we produce and release and put out some progressive content. The easiest example is slavery. Some people died thinking that slavery was the right way to go, but it's history, like the Nazis and stuff like that. History proved them wrong. So there were people that were saying the earth is flat and stuff like that. So when I say about progressive, it's kind of like I'm trying to anticipate what the world is going to look like in decades or centuries, and how can I be part of the change and the good change. And I gotta admit that a lot of it is pure speculations based on my observations of the world or my core values. But still, I tend to think that we do what I call progressive content, which is putting people from all origins, women, young people, in front of the camera and tell stories that are not necessarily mainstream, but have a global potential. I try to work locally with global ambitions.
So you guys create your own content. Like this is all stuff people are writing for you, producing for you. Walk me through how a show becomes a show.
There's two ways. One, and it's not the most interesting one, so I'm going to start with this one. It's maybe modesty, but we got an idea of a show or a movie or a TV program or whatever, and we get the right people to materialize or make that idea or that vision happen. Honestly, I want to tend to do that more and more. But if I'm 100% honest, for now, those are not the concepts that excite me the most, because we're still learning a lot from the writers and directors and the creators that we're working with. I don't want to say that we're not creative, not at all, but we tend to go that way more and more. But we are aware that it's a process and we got to get better at that. Even though we had like good successes with our ideas that we bring people to materialize and produce. The other way for now, which is much more exciting, is I don't like to call them unknown, but that there's a concept that I like, is the value, the potential of a person. And often, like, people estimate or the value of the talent of a person, or the creativity of that person based on a resume, on numbers, on previous accomplishments and stuff like that. What for now, what thrills me the most and what excites me the most is like there's somebody, I'm 40 years old, and here in Canada for a producer of movie and TV shows, it's quite young because most of them are in their 50s and 60s and like they're running shit. Pardon my French. So when like a 20 years old or 30 years old comes to me with what she or he thinks is like so far his or her best uh, life idea about a movie, we like to develop around it. We like to nourish it. We like to make it grow. And I got a lot of flaws like everybody else, but if I could pat myself on the back and say that one thing I got, I would dare to say that it's my instinct. When I see somebody who's doing a project for a reason, whatever that reason might be, it can be like spiritual, it can be linked to a social uh, situation or a social concern, or it might come from something really personal. I think I got a talent to make that grow and flourish and becomes a reality. So right now, at the stage I'm at in my career, that's what thrills me the most. And then we want to stay the most independent because my partner's got a little bit of money from his music label. I got a little bit of money from my career in advertising. So we take like one bite at a time. We take one step at a time. We work with banks, but not too much because we like to invest sometimes our own money to keep our independence. And we try to be like as free as we can stay, as independent as we can stay, but we collaborate with any small or huge players or partners as far as distributors, as far as networks, but we still fight in a really peaceful way for our freedom and our independence.
So, for instance, if you're dealing with networks in Canada, they all have mandates, they all have missions, they have advertisers, I assume, that they need to answer to. So, when you're coming, you're like, we're this indie crew. How does that work? Like, are you guys, well, first of all, are you distributed in Canada on mainstream cable channels or, okay. So, how,
And on platforms like Crave, which is the Canadian partner of Showtime and HBO, they distribute content for each other in the States and here, Canada. I talk a lot about empathy. I really get interested in people that I'm working with. So those networks, like I know the name of their children. I know where they go for vacation, and it's not a part of my game. I think it makes my job easier because when we put our guard down and when we can be more human about what we're talking about, that's one of my assume like strategy is that to get to know first, because the people and the persons and the humans, it might sound like cliche or corny or whatever, but honestly for me it always comes first. I talk a lot, so sometimes it puts people at ease because I kind of do the first step, like let's talk about me so that you're gonna feel more comfortable talking about yourself later on because you're gonna know stuff about me and how I think and stuff like that. I'm aware of that. So that's one thing. The so I put the person first. The other thing is that I always work with the concept of don't give them what they want, give them what they need. And I tend to know what networks, because they are really different. We work in sports, documentaries, private and public networks, and they all got agendas. Like you said before, Jason, they all got advertisers. And that's a pretty good question because it changes the approach, it changes the contents that we're presenting to them. But kind of aware of what they are broadcasting, but I'm really aware of what are their goals, what are their markets. And I think it might be it's empathy. That was like person knowing and bonding with the humans, the persons, the people. Second thing is empathy, like I don't see him like as a check or as a bank or as money. I see them as people, fathers, wives, husbands. I see them as persons. So I'm empathic about what are personally, what is their position, and as a professional, what is the goals and the objectives and the markets for their network. So when I'm presenting content, people don't know that, but when they're telling me that I'm a good salesman, I don't say nothing, but it kind of offend me because I'm never under the impression that I'm selling something to a network, even though a lot of my peers and other TV producer, that's how they see it. I'm always approaching networks like, hey, I need you. I would like to be a partner with you, but I got an opportunity that I think would be beneficial for both of us, kind of a win-win situation. So I guess they feel that. And I guess that's why in 3 or something years, we've produced like 30 TV shows for like 12 different networks who are not the same at all.
We only have a few minutes, but can you talk a little bit about a couple of the projects? Just give me like what they're about, and if you have anything upcoming that you want to tell people about, let us know about that as well.
Our biggest projects are in writing right now because of the work that we did in the last 3 or 4 years. Like we get our biggest, greatest opportunities right now. So we're working on a sci-fi movie, which is kind of a dystopia in a nearby future set in Montreal. We got financing for writing it, and it's written and directed by a young female writer and director. She's 25 years old and she's amazing, full of ideas, really intelligent. We're working on two platform like in Quebec we got Illico, which is kind of the Netflix version in Quebec, and Crave, which is kind of the Canadian version of Hulu or Amazon Prime or Netflix. This is obviously it's a smaller market, so we're working on both of those networks, Illico in Quebec and Crave in Canada, on two series. One about addicts, drugs and gaming and alcohol and sex addicts. Another one about small small criminals, kind of young immigrants in Montreal that don't get a chance in life by the racism that is still present in the system here, so they choose the shortcut in crime. That sci-fi movie. And what we've done like I told you, I'm not going to talk about the 30 things we did, but to set some example, we had the first like Asian descendant, the first black guy from his parents are from Haiti, but he was born in Montreal. We got the first black guy who had his show on the sports network, TVA Sport, the equivalent of Sportsnet or ESPN or stuff like that. The first black guy who had his own show, and it was kind of like left field with Joe Rogan type honesty and conversation and humor and stuff like that. So that's a great accomplishment. We had a documentary series which was sold worldwide on TV5 Monde, traduced in 25 languages, which was called Fille de Moto, like woman on wheels, woman on motorcycle. So it was about a group of women who were setting shops, organizing events, and revolutionizing the motorcycle bike world in Canada, focusing on a group of women. And we did also a lot of short format web series like Dog's Day, Amour d'Occasion, which was showing the kind of multicultural mosaic that we got in a borough here in Montreal. La loi, c'est la loi. The law is the law. A comedy about every abuse that's possible with like police brutality, how they target minorities and poor people and stuff like that. So, and Home Turf also, La Maison des Folles in French, who was about kind of foster home with all girls and all women based on the true life story of the author. And just to finish with that, like those content, those shows, they had kind of success here in Quebec and Canada, but a lot of them got rewarded and prized all around the world for work. I've been to New York, Vancouver, Berlin, Paris, Cannes in the last 2 or 3 years to represent my work, because it was in competition and stuff like that. So like I said earlier, I want to do some local content with local resources, whatever what their origins, background, ages, gender, orientation is. But I want to find something that's so universal that it can be appealing globally.
I'm going to wrap up, but if people want to find out more about you or your company or your shows, where can they find you on the web?
Saint-Laurent.tv, Saint Laurent like St. Laurent TV on Facebook, on Instagram, and we're just having like all of our website perfectly translated. I think it might be out or it's going to be in a couple of days, but it was important for me since obviously English is the #1 worldwide language, that our content they got subtitles. Some of it is dubbed, or at least you get an English description, but most of our content is at least subtitled. And I think more and more people are going to be willing to watch content in Danish, Spanish like Narcos, Japanese, Chinese, French, English. I think that's more than a trend.
And that's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more of our content, including our movie reviews, visit our website, norestfortheweekendpodcast.com. Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Once again, I'd like to thank my guest, Lou Belanger, and our sponsor, JMR Rentals. For Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.